Hello and welcome to your Home Depot how-to workshop. Today, Antonio and I are going to show you how to build a fire pit. We'll cover everything from choosing the right fire pit, preparing the site, building the fire pit, adding finishing touches and safety tips, along with a list of tools and materials, and then at the end we'll do a summary.
Yeah, but before we start, let's make sure to choose the right fire pit. That's an essential step. There are various types of fire pits, and the one you choose depends on your needs and your preferences.
Let's start with fuel. There are wood-burning fire pits and gas fire pits.
Yeah, wood-burning fire pits are going to offer that classic campfire experience, and they're going to have a higher heat output. They're perfect if you love the smell and sound of burning wood.
Gas fire pits, which can use propane or natural gas, are easy to start and convenient. Plus, you don't have the ash to clean up, so there's less of a mess at the end. They are also ideal for small gatherings and often come with ledges for drinks.
Next, consider the design and style. While fire pit tables provide warmth, some table fire pits can also convert to an ice chest, so you can use that for drinks in the summertime when a fire isn't necessarily needed. Make sure to check the manual and manufacturer's warranty to make sure it can be used for both. Fire pit bowls are portable and elegant. You have chimeneas that are efficient with minimal smoke and have that rustic look. Modern fire pits, they're sleek, they're stylish, and they have unique materials.
Stone fire pits are durable and long-lasting, blending naturally with outdoor settings, and are often DIY friendly. DIY fire pits are customizable to fit personal style, they're cost-effective, and a rewarding project for DIY enthusiasts. Metal fire pits come in various styles and metals, are durable and often portable.
Now, materials and constructions are important too. Stone and metal, they're durable, and DIY kits or pre-made designs can simplify the process. But one thing to keep in mind, always check local regulations and ensure safety measures are in place. For this workshop, we're going to be building a round fire pit using blocks. So Mike, how many blocks are we going to need for this fire pit project?
Well, obviously it's going to depend. When you're building your fire pit, it depends on the size and the type of blocks in your fire pit. We'll be using two different types of blocks, a mini and a trapezoidal block. One side of this block is shorter than the other side, so when it aligns with other blocks, it's going to naturally form a circle. We're going to make a round fire pit with approximate inside diameter from one side to the other of 31.8 inches. And an outside diameter of 45.8 inches using 10¼ inch long by 7 inch wide and 3½ inch high trapezoidal blocks, and 7 inch long by 3½ inch wide and 1¾ inch high mini blocks. We will stack them 4 blocks high for a height of 14 inches. We'll need 48 blocks of each type, 48 mini and 48 trapezoidal. That equates to 12 blocks of each type per level, sometimes called a course. Now, depending on the size that you want your fire pit to be, you can scale it down or up based on some simple measurements. If a smaller fire pit is desired, obviously fewer blocks will be needed per level. A smaller inside diameter will result in a smaller fire containment area, and the outside diameter will decrease the overall size. If larger fire pits are desired, more blocks will be needed per level. The height can be modified by adding or removing layers. Each additional layer will add 3½ inches to the height. Ensure you have enough blocks and construction adhesive for stability. Finally, you want to ensure the location remains the same distance from structures and trees as you make those adjustments. It should be at least 15 feet. Now, Antonio, 15 feet is a good general rule of thumb.
Right.
You do probably want to check with local ordinances or HOA rules just to make sure. But obviously, if you decide where your fire pit's going and it is 15 feet, if you decide to make it bigger and you leave it in the same spot, it's not going to be 15 feet away from those structures and other things. So just make sure that as you adjust the size, you also make adjustments to the distance it is from everything else. So with all of that said, we are ready to get into the steps.
Yeah, I think we're ready with all that math, those numbers, and folks, yeah, we're going to repeat those safety regulations often because it's just so important. So going into steps, step 1, it's all about choosing the right or the proper location, the right style, and the right shape for you. Location and size are crucial, So choose a level area that's away from those structures and trees that you talked about, Mike. Got to make sure that it's level, it's got a nice view, 15 feet away from any of those combustible items, things like trees, buildings, shrubs. Great call out right now. If you're not sure, check your local regulations. This can vary from region to region, or if you live in an area with a homeowners association, so reference those guidelines and check for any specific requirements that might adjust or impact your project. So it might also be a good idea on that point of safety, Mike, is make sure that you have things like a fire extinguisher readily available, or even a water hose that's long enough to reach that area of your fire pit.
And if you have any concerns, fire pits are safe, but things can go wrong. So you're probably not going to need those things, but you want them standing by just in case.
Fair.
Now, ensure the fire pit fits your space and decide on the shape. Rectangular fire pits are a good option if you have a larger space, but round and square tend to be the most common. For this workshop, we will be building, once again, a round wood burning fire pit using trapezoidal blocks. The shape of these blocks with one shorter edge allows the stones to fit together in a circular pattern without any gaps. Now, one thing about the size, you do have options on the size, of course. The way that these trapezoidal blocks kind of go together, they naturally only go together one way and they only make one size. But what can you do if you want it a little bit bigger? We're going to do this actually in our install. You can add, hand me one of those flat ones. Right here.
Guys.
These little pavers, you can put these in between to open up a gap between those to make it a little bit larger. Another option that you can do if you're doing the trapezoidal blocks is to put just regular straight square blocks in between these. That's going to be still a circle when you're done, but it's going to have slight straight edges between the curved blocks. So it's still going to be a circle overall, but it's going to be bigger. So depending on what you're doing, you can add and subtract to this to change the shape. We talked about squares are pretty popular. If you start making a square fire pit just bigger, remember it's going to get really wide both ways. That's okay, but if you're planning to sit around this with friends, the bigger it is, the further you are away from people. So in that case, if you want a larger fire pit, you don't necessarily need to make the square bigger. You can make it rectangular. So you can make two of the sides longer, so you're still close to people, but you've got a larger fire area. And even with the trapezoidal blocks, another thing that you can do, which I think is kind of cool, is alternate the way that they're connecting. These are all going in the same direction, so it's making that circle. If you were to take one of these and flip it, you could make kind of an undulating pattern. So the curve is not just one direction, it's kind of undulating back and forth. So again, your creativity can kind of take over. You can adjust these and make it any shape you want. The cool thing about it, these are all separate pieces. It's like a puzzle, but you can put them together in any configuration. So you have a lot of flexibility on the shape and size of your fire pit.
It's sounding like the artist in you, Mike, is really coming out because you're like, you've got a clean palette. That's the reason why you might want to go a DIY option, is you have additional creativity and control.
Yep. Now also, you want to consider the seating and the style around your fire pit. Whether it's a built-in seating situation, a seating wall, maybe on one or all sides of your fire pit, or standalone seatings. We'll cover that later in the workshop. One thing to think about your seating before you decide on the height of your fire pit. What you don't want to do is build a really tall fire pit when you plan to have like Adirondack chairs or something where you're sitting kind of low. It's going to block your view. So think about the seating that you either have or plan to add before deciding on the size of your fire pit.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Mike. All right, so kind of moving along through these steps. Once you've chosen that location, as always with any project, you're going to measure, but also mark the area where that fire pit will be placed. A common size for fire pits is you're looking usually around about 36 inches to give you a reference point. That's because a lot of like those fire pit rings that go inside the fire pit, that's the common size. So you may want to match it to that. But it can even go up to 46 inches. So again, you have a lot of creative control in the diameter of that fire pit. Use that tape measure, find the center point of your fire pit, and then mark it with a stake that we have right here.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that string little trick that you talked about before, Mike.
Yeah, you want to tie a string to the stake and put that in the middle and use that to measure the radius of your fire pit, half the diameter. You want to make sure that you tie this loosely as you go, and here's why. If you tie this really tight, as you're going around marking the exterior, guess what? That's going to start wrapping around the stake and it's going to shorten the string. So you want to keep that nice and loose so as you go around, it slides around and it remains the same distance from the stake. That's really important. Now for this project, we're making a 44-inch circle. So half the diameter will be 22 inches. Walk around the stake, marking the perimeter with spray paint or a rope to create a perfect circle.
All right, next you're going to want to dig out the pit area to a depth of about 6 inches deep. Use a shovel to remove the grass and dirt, making sure that the bottom of that fire pit is as level as possible. This is important because it's going to be the base of your fire pit.
You want to use a level to check that the ground is smooth, flat, and consistent. Remove the soil from the high spots to bring it as close to level as possible. You can also use a tamper to ensure the base is level and compact.
So now, after you've dug up that area, you're going to want to compact the outer edge where the blocks will be stacked, about 4 inches from the ledge of the circle. The surrounding soil, it needs to be a little loose, that way you have optimal drainage. And this is where the wall of your fire pit will sit. You can go ahead and also add in a fabric barrier if you want to help prevent weeds from growing through your fire pit area.
Now, after the area is dug out, you want to add a 2 to 3 inch layer of gravel to the bottom of the pit for drainage. Wet the gravel before compacting to help settle the gravel particles more effectively, allowing them to sort of lock together more tightly. The moisture reduces the friction between the particles, making it easier for them to compact into the dense, hard layer at the bottom that you want. This creates a more stable and solid base, which is essential for the structural integrity of the fire pit. A well-compacted, firm base ensures that the fire pit remains level and secure over time, preventing any shifting or settling that could lead to instability or unevenness. Use a tamper to compact the gravel, ensuring a solid and level base.
Now, start placing that first layer of stones or bricks in a circle around the edge of the fire pit. Ensure the stones are level by using a level. Adjust the stones as needed, and you can do this by simply adding or removing gravel underneath them. You can also use a small amount of leveling sand that allows you to make some minor adjustments.
Once the first layer is complete and level, continue stacking the stones to build up the walls of your fire pit. Stagger the joints between each layer, similar to how bricks are laid in a wall, to enhance the stability of the structure. The easiest way to do this is by placing the center of the top block in alignment with the joint between the two blocks that are below it.
For added stability, use an appropriate construction adhesive between the layers. Once the second layer is all lined up, carefully remove one block at a time and apply 2 thick beads of construction adhesive to the center of the blocks. Go ahead and reinstall the block and push down evenly and firmly on those blocks. You're going to continue this for all remaining blocks on each layer, but I want to pause there real quick because we talk about construction adhesive and there's a lot of options out there. Sometimes when we're taking on a project, we might be pressed for time, so you may want to look at products that have a quicker adhesion and a quicker drying time. Mike, this product we have right here is the Loctite, the Power Grab.
Yep. The cool thing about this is once you put this in place, it does dry over time and cure, but the cool thing about it, it has what they call instant grab. And this is really kind of creepy and spooky when you do it because you don't think this is actually going to work. But when you do this, I'll just show you a quick demo here. You add a couple of beads. And Antonio, if you'll just add that block to it, you'll see that this obviously hasn't dried, but when Antonio lifts the first block, it's going to lift the second block. It's got what they call instant grab, so it seeps into the nooks and crannies of the block and instantly kind of adheres. You can still make adjustments. It's not dry. You can see this is still movable, but it's tacky and sticky enough to hold the blocks. It's pretty cool. The other thing we wanted to point out, there's a really important reason why you want to add that second layer and make sure that it's right before you start adhering the blocks. What you don't want to do is add a block and adhere it and build that second layer while you're adhering it, because if you're off or if you make some kind of mistake, there's not much you can do about it. But it's easier to test fit it, dry fit it, make sure that it's right, you've got the spacing right, then go back and adhere one block at a time. It's just a better, safer way to do it.
All right, great call out. Take your time, always check with that level, and as you do that, it's just going to make a better end result.
Right.
Great stuff here, Mike.
Now, when you have reached your desired height, typically about 12 to 18 inches above the ground, you can cap the top layer with flat stones or bricks. This creates a finished look and provides a smooth surface to, again, kind of just set items on if needed.
But adding those finishing touches, it really just helps by cleaning up the area around the fire pit. You want to make it look as nice as possible. So this is where you're going to want to go ahead and take any excess gravel or dirt that's around that area, clean it up, and ensure that that whole area is free of any debris, really, for safety as well. You can also add a fire ring to the inside of your fire pit. And I briefly mentioned this before when you're talking about the size, but one of the benefits of having that fire pit ring is it adds durability and it actually enhances the safety. A fire ring offers additional benefits, things like easier cleanup. It also gives improved containment of any ash and debris that forms, and it will also help prolong the life of your fire pit by protecting that inner wall, enhancing the aesthetics as well. It promotes better airflow. There's a lot of benefits here. It gives you a cleaner burn for that wood fire, so it's also going to, in the long run, reduce any maintenance needs that you might have.
Now, real quick, the fire bowl that you're mentioning, those are not required. You can make just a fire pit and have the fire just in there, but it does kind of make it easier to clean. It dresses it up a bit. The nice thing, again, about these blocks, these trapezoidal blocks, when they go together just as they are, without any kind of additional spacing, they only go together in one size. Those bowls are generally made to fit that size. Right. If you make it much bigger, those generally won't fit. There probably are some size variations, but there are limitations. So just know that going in. If you're doing a normal size that these naturally form, that's a good approach, but it won't necessarily work for all fire pits.
Yep, great call out.
Finally, you want to add the firewood, obviously, or set up your gas fire pit kit according to the manufacturer's instructions. Always remember to follow safety precautions when using your fire pit, such as keeping a fire extinguisher or a water hose nearby and never, ever leaving the fire unattended.
Yep, that's right. And to add to that, that means we're going to talk about like those cleanup steps, but any embers, anything, pour water, we'll talk about those steps, but safety. Yep. There you have it, folks. Really, the project is done, and now you have a beautifully, creatively customized, constructed fire pit ready for use.
If I'm doing it, it's very creative.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Now, a fire pit is not complete without comfortable seating. We mentioned this earlier. Install seating by placing benches or building seating walls around the fire pit. Use durable materials like stone or treated wood. Add finishing touches like mulch, plants, or outdoor lighting to enhance the area.
Yeah, and now that we've went ahead and walked through all of these steps to build a fire pit, here's a list of necessary tools and materials for the actual construction process. Tools are going to be things like shovel, whether it's a square point shovel, a trenching shovel, that tamper we mentioned before, other garden tools like a hoe, a rake, having a wide push broom to clean up any debris in that area. We used a level. How many times did we use the level, Mike? I mean, it was through every step of the project.
Absolutely.
That string that we tied around that stake, a rope if you wanted to give that circle area with that rope. A measuring tape is your best friend, as it is with most DIY projects. Now, this is something that we didn't talk about, but if you're going with that bigger fire pit that you mentioned, you might have to dig out a bigger area. So you might want to think about renting a tool like a plate compactor. It's just a power tool that it helps flatten and level that area, and it makes the project a little easier.
Right.
So again, that's for those bigger, wide-scale projects.
Yeah, it does the same thing as a tamper. It's just not a manual tool. It's doing the work for you. And again, if you've got a larger fire pit, you may not want to do the manual tamping throughout, so the plate compactor is a good choice.
Yeah, and you don't have to buy it. You can just rent it for the day.
Rent that from Home Depot.
Yep. We've got some other stuff that you might need as well. Marking that circle, so some type of marking paint, might be a spray paint. Using a rubber mallet to tap on the blocks. Wheelbarrow. You got a lot of heavy materials to bring it from point A to point B.
Yep.
So that's going to be your best friend. And with any project, safety is really important. So protect your hands with gloves, protect your eyes with safety goggles.
Real quick, the rubber mallet is really important because If you've got a large hammer around the house and you expect to use it, you can, but the risk is you can chip or crack these or just mar them up, which you don't want to do. So the rubber mallet is going to do the same thing as far as forcing them to be level without doing any kind of damage to the block. So something to think about. Now, aside from the tools, there are some materials that you're going to need. You're going to need that coarse drainage gravel for the bottom of the fire pit, stones or blocks, cap blocks for the top if you decide to kind of dress that out at the top, construction adhesive, a fire ring if desired, firewood or a gas fire pit kit, a fabric barrier. That's about it, really. Now, let's address some frequently asked questions. Antonio, do I need a permit to build a fire pit?
Well, this is one of those questions where we're going to answer it depends, because it all depends on where you live, what type of home you have. So always check with any project your local regulations. Requirements might vary, so here's some quick advice. If you need to get a permit and you research your local regulations, go ahead and start by visiting your city's or your municipality's official website. Online is our best friend. It's quick, it's easy. You can look for sections related to building permits, fire code or fire safety, or residential outdoor structures. As an alternative, you can call or just pop into a local fire department and inquire about specific requirements for fire pits. Sometimes an inspection may be required for a project, so just consider how this might impact the timeline for your build. Regardless of permit requirements, safety should always be followed, so safety guidelines. And speaking of safety, Mike, we've mentioned this throughout. What are some of the safety requirements that our customers should take with building a fire pit?
Well, you want to ensure the fire pit, again, is at least 15 feet away from any structures. Avoid overhanging trees. Have a fire extinguisher or hose nearby, again, just in case. Additionally, this is a great idea. Consider using a spark screen or cover to prevent sparks from flying off and potentially starting a fire. This adds just an extra layer of safety by containing the embers and reducing the risk of any kind of accidental fire. And the nice thing about those, you can see through those, so it's not blocking the fire.
Yeah, it's still
you can still see the
usable.
flame. It's just like one of those screens that you would put in front of a fireplace. It does the same thing. But it's just a nice added feature, so you don't have to worry about those embers flying away and starting a fire somewhere that you're not even paying attention to. Now, Antonio, how do you ensure proper drainage?
Well, we talked about this, but one of the main things is adding that layer of gravel at the bottom of the fire pit. That's going to promote drainage, so you can add more. So just consider, again, your project, your build, that's a must-have. Now, speaking of more FAQs, I want to ask, can I build a fire pit on a patio or if I have a deck?
That is a very common question. People ask that all the time. The answer is yes, but you want to ensure that the materials used for the fire pit are fireproof, and keep in mind that 15-foot rule, right? If you have a small deck, you shouldn't put a fire pit there because of the proximity to your house. If you have a larger deck or maybe a standalone deck away from the house, you know, that can work. But you want to use non-combustible materials like stone and brick like we're using in this project, or concrete blocks. That's essential to prevent fire hazards. Place a fireproof mat or pad under the fire pit to protect the deck or the patio surface from the heat and the sparks. This will help prevent damage to the surface and reduce that risk of fire. You want to seal the bottom layer of blocks to the existing patio or deck to ensure structural integrity and prevent shifting. This is especially important on a deck where sparks could easily ignite the wooden surface. You want to regularly inspect your deck for any signs of damage or wear. Just because you put it there and you haven't had a problem yet, you want to keep an eye on it over time, especially after using the fire pit. Address any issues promptly to maintain safety. Now, Antonio, what about the size? Is there like a perfect size for a pit?
No, there's not one size fits all, and that can vary. So really, it all depends on your space or what you were talking about right now. If you have it on the deck or patio and its proximity to those combustible items, the general rule of thumb, especially when you're looking at things like fire pit rings, you'll see the sizes are going to vary pretty much around 36 to 44, sometimes even a little larger, but that's the average diameter. So you're looking at 36 to 44 inches, generally speaking. Now, once I know the size of my fire pit, a common question is, to your earlier points before, is what do I do to maintain my fire pit?
Well, like you mentioned with the ashes, you want to clean the ashes out on a regular basis. Check for any damage, or you want to store your firewood properly. That's really important. Strong winds can blow sparks out of your pit and set wildfires. Check the weather reports. Make sure that your garden hose reaches your fire pit area, or have a fire extinguisher handy in case of an emergency.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that is just be prepared in any shape or form, and just be aware of what's happening in your area.
Right.
You know, and always put out fires completely. You know, we mentioned this, we repeated it a couple times. So this is where you're going to want to at least spread out any of the hot ashes or unburnt wood. Give it a light spray with your hose or any kind of water, just to go ahead and extinguish any of those burning embers. And never ever use lighter fluid or any other flammable materials to light a fire pit. The same can go with the type of wood that you're burning as well. You want to avoid burning any chemically treated woods on top of that. Always use a fire pit cover. You mentioned this, and that's a great call out because that fire pit cover is great, but this is also talking about protecting the entire structure from weather, especially if you live in areas where it can get really cold, snow, ice buildup. This is going to go ahead and protect it from the elements. And as a reminder, we got to do this. We know it's obvious, but always be aware. Keep any children or pets at a safe distance at all times when you're using that fire pit.
One more quick note, we talked about combustible material around a fire pit. Think about the time of year that you generally use a fire pit. It's fall and maybe heading into the winter. What's on the ground in the fall? Lots of dry leaves, right?
Yeah.
So, you might not think about that too much. You might have cleared the area immediately around the fire pit, but if you've got a lot of trees and a lot of leaves, make sure you remove those from the immediate area, maybe that 15 feet that we're talking about, just to make sure and be a little bit safer that you don't have any unneeded fire hazards, okay? Now, we've talked about a lot today, but let's recap what is involved in building a fire pit. We've provided you with a list of tools and materials, as well as some guidance on choosing the right fire pit. We also provided your step-by-step instructions, including preparing your site, building the fire pit, finishing touches, and safety tips. If you have additional questions that we did not answer today, you can always email us at workshopslive@homedepot.com.
That's right, Mike, and we really appreciate your participation and hope this workshop has provided the knowledge to safely and confidently build your very own fire pit.
And of course, we hope to see you at our next how-to workshop. So on behalf of myself, Antonio, and the entire Home Depot How-To Workshop team, thank you for joining us today. And of course, thank you for shopping at the Home Depot.